Okay, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Good. So I'm Matt Conlin, as Alicia just mentioned. I'm the co-founder and chief customer officer of Fluent. We've developed a suite of commerce media solutions that help our partners in retail, grocery, drug, and a number of other categories serve personalized ads in the checkout experience. So that's us, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague here, John Giaquinto. Uh, Famed business leader, marketer, analyst, and he's got a storied career that we'll learn a lot about. But I thought before we give him the floor here, I just wanted to start with maybe a moment of gratitude as we kick off today. So I was at a table last night at this dinner with Nikki actually, and she gave this idea. There was a woman that was at the show yesterday named Christiane Brooks. She has a company called Love Snap, and she handed out these bracelets. And the basic idea is, anytime you're having an idea of self-doubt or you have some behaviors that are kind of negative that are keeping you from your full potential, you're supposed to give yourself a little love snap as a reminder of how much we have to be grateful for and how much potential we all have. And I just like to, start off because I think the fact that we're all here in this room in New York City, we all have much to be grateful for. And I think if we all put our minds to it, greatness is possible, both personally and professionally. So, 2 seconds for gratitude, if we could. And with that, I'd like to open up to John here, and maybe we could start off with a bit about your journey, and including some of the learnings along the way, how you got to Rite Aid, and perhaps even a notion of maybe an inflection point moment in your career that puts you on this current trajectory.
I feel like my career's been only inflection points. Like,
amazing.
I haven't had a straightaway yet. So going way back and showing like the hardest right turn that I took, which didn't really feel, it feels like honestly what I was interested in college, I'm still doing today, but I've had so many different jobs. It's hard to justify that, but it feels that way to me. I was an art major in college, and I minored in communications. And I've gotten so far away from creative in most people's minds that I'm managing analytics and doing very behavioral economics types of things using data. And it's never felt like I woke up and said, I've taken a turn, because it was always about creatively finding solutions, whether it was visual, whether it was testing or data, creatively finding solutions that influence consumer behavior. So I started off on the creative side, wanted to be an ad guy. I wrote pretty good copy, by the way, if I do say so myself. And one job that I landed got me into having data available. It wasn't really my job, but I just got so addicted to the data. I loved having the depth of data, and that was at a supermarket. It was Shaw's Supermarkets, which was purchased by Albertsons, who was purchased by Super Value. A lot of that going around, right? And it stuck. And when I went into other industries after, I always just yearned for that data again. And it's led me to here. I've worked for consultancies, worked for multiple brands, gone back and forth. Clients that actually Rite Aid was my client in 2010 when I worked for Symphony. I've worked with a few of the consultancies. Either they worked for me or I worked for them, or maybe I don't remember. But yeah, it's led me to hear that analytics and everything all together still feels like that guy in college that was using markers and writing headlines to try to change consumer behavior. It doesn't feel like any of those turns were hard turns. It probably looks that way, though.
Would you say you've left your creative passion and you've replaced it for a passion for data?
I don't think it's different. I think we think of things, we place people into boxes and ways of thinking and saying that analysts are left brain and creative people are right brain. But if you're doing it right, you're using left and right brain for everything. If you're solving problems, it's requiring you to think creatively, but then it's requiring you to have the criticism and the discipline around that to narrow down possibilities of what it is. It honestly feels the same to me. I don't have the smell of markers in my studio anymore.
It's unfortunate.
It is. I miss that. I kind of miss. If somebody could come up with a cologne that's like not even dry erase, like the old school markers, I'd buy it.
So let's talk a bit about your experience at Rite Aid. I'm curious to know how you're approaching loyalty from like how the strategy for both digital and in-store experiences, and how you're kind of tying loyalty into that and driving great expectations for great results for customers.
So anything I say about Rite Aid has to be in the context of what's happened in the last year. And just so you know, before you feel bad for me, I'm one of the few people at Rite Aid that jumped into the fire. I had a very good, stable job working for a large supermarket. I was incredibly successful, and I said, hey, I'm super comfortable. Something's got to be wrong. Let me go into something here. 2 of the last 4 people that had been in my job, I knew, and I called them and said, tell me what has gone on there. 4 of the last people, when I hit my 1-year anniversary, I beat their tenure combined. One of my friends was in this job for about 45 days. So it's been tough for a long time at Rite Aid. What is the character flaw that I have that made me go and seek that out? I don't know. You guys are not qualified to judge that. I wish you were, and you can give me some free therapy. But I decided this is going to be either a complete failure or an incredible case study. And I love having these case studies where I don't know anyone that could have done X. So what I was able to achieve at Rite Aid, among other things, but the biggest, most concrete thing was within a couple of weeks, saw some low-hanging fruit, made some changes to our CRM program, which is mostly direct mail, which is going way back. As somebody who launched a digital-only program in the past, it was kind of felt old school. Mostly direct mail, have to have that threshold of production costs. I was able to take that program and double the amount of incremental sales that it was getting. That might sound like, hey, great, or maybe it was really shitty before or something like that. But, we had the best agency in the world. We had good people that were experienced in loyalty programs running this. Some friends of mine had run it, but I doubled the amount of incremental sales. Because of doubling and crossing a threshold, we had, I think, 300% of the EBITDA contribution from it. But none of that is really the real thing. The real thing is we were closing stores at the same time. So I'm not talking rate-based metrics. I'm talking at scale. The raw net number was double with 20% fewer stores. If somebody asked me to do that, I'd say, you're out of your mind. I cannot work for somebody of your low intelligence. But yet we were able to do that. So that was another incredible case study that I got. I'm so, talk about gratitude. I'm grateful that I've had this opportunity to be there. And now my 1-year anniversary has come and gone, and coming up on my 2-year. So
impressive. Can I just pause for a moment? Just show of hands. How many people in this room, when things are going too good at your work or in your life, you start to feel a little uncomfortable? Because I'm certainly one of those. I don't know. I don't think it's a character flaw. I think it's like human nature to want more and to keep pushing ourselves. So I think we're all there with you, John.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend going into jumping into a fire the way I did, but
so
it's not for everyone.
So without going too detailed, I think it'd be helpful just to learn, so you had massive improvements to the CRM program of direct mail. Was it just because you were gleaning insights about what your customers really needed? Was it the copy, the creative? Was there anything that you feel comfortable sharing that really helped drive that improvement?
I do, but this might be a bit of a paradigm shift for people, so just buckle up. It was really mostly like blocking and tackling. The insights were there. The data was there. The analytics were there. But just having the discipline to look at that and nothing else and not trying to be too clever sounds like that's nothing. Like you didn't do anything, John. That's actually one of the biggest things you can do in personalization is get out of the way of the personalization. If we take our ego out of it, I mean, it's actually like a really almost like a spiritual thing to be like, how do I take myself and everyone else out of the equation and let reality drive this? So, we were being clever by focusing on our top customers. That's where we're getting the biggest return. So, of course, you want to make the program more efficient. You focus smaller. There's a lot of things that work against you when you work small ball. So then you start saying, okay, well, it can't be as simple as just scaling. So let me test things. So when you start testing things, you actually have small microcosms across, especially when you're printing and your production costs go up. And then you're not getting that return. And it becomes a sort of a vicious cycle of how can I be clever to solve this instead of saying it's not about me. The answer is in the data. I just need to listen. So I stripped everything out of it and just kind of scaled with some intent. And that was one of the biggest things that we can do. And I told people, I'm going to screw up our rate-based metrics for a little while. It's going to take a while when I go into these deeper audiences for this to turn around, but it's the right thing to do for the company. And it turned out it didn't take very long at all. And not only the net amount was more, but the rate-based metrics were more. And when we had 20% fewer stores, we had 30% more people redeeming our coupons.
That's a net positive.
It's yeah. I'm not a math guy, so I don't know. Tell me, but it seemed like it was almost an impossible thing to do,
right.
And yet it was there, and it could have been done at any time. But it sounds like a simple thing, but having that discipline to do a simple thing, and to take the complexity out, and to understand what you know and what you think you know,
right,
is the thing.
And you're scratching at a topic I think is important, but how do you remove your own personal bias when you're looking at measuring the success of efforts?
Yeah.
I think we all come into problem solving with our own bias based on our background.
Oh, yeah.
Not any thoughts or advice for the group on how you for that?
I think there are two types of people who realize they have a bias or biases, and people who don't. And really, if you're trying to use logic and data, you have to understand almost everything you do is a bias. It's especially tough for me because I've done this so many times. I've worked with multiple retailers. There's some patterns I've seen again and again and again. I've talked to other people. I've worked in consultancies, and I've seen that they've seen the same pattern. To have the discipline, it is a rare thing to have the discipline to go into a new situation and test something so broadly that you're acting like you have no idea. But that's incredibly powerful because I like to say you find the edges. You find, like, right now with this audience at this company, here's how basket offers work at this threshold report. And then you start getting better and better. And it seems like you're going slower, like you're starting sooner, but you end up getting to an optimized state faster. If anyone here play chess, you can't like do a checkmate in 3 moves usually, so, or 4. What's the minimum? Is it 4 fool's mate? Something like that, 3 or 4. But like if you understand that I'm going to get somewhere in 5 or 6 moves that I want to be, instead of saying no, I just want to do 1 move. It's kind of ridiculous in the real world. So I think having the discipline to say we're going to start back here, but I will get there quicker, it works every time. You outperform, you go faster than people who are going to start with more assumptions.
Okay, so switching gears slightly, if we, a topic that's near and dear to my heart, many people in this room, is the rise of retail media. Our industry is tracking towards a $100 billion category by 2027. I know Rite Aid's making some investments into building out its own retail media practice and some of the other competitors.
Yeah.
I think the one big question that comes up, especially the lens of loyalty and personalization and driving great customer experiences, is how do you balance the customer first requirements of delivering great outcomes and delivering on your customers' expectations while also meeting the needs of the advertisers that are participating in the retail media ecosystem, right? So Mondelez and Procter & Gamble and where's Elisa? Her former company, Cetaphil, like they're advertising in the Rite Aid retail media ecosystem, and they need their needs met. At the same time, the customers first. How do you strike that balance?
I think that's a much tougher question than anyone gives it credit for. And I can say that I am an extremist in that area. What I have done in companies is I've been sometimes the only person saying, I don't care if you take in 10 million, $100 million. There's $100 million that you can take in. Let me backtrack a little bit. If you work in merchandising and you get $1 million to do an end cap, and you say, I'm bringing that to the bottom line because that end cap is paid for. It's not necessarily. If you were not going to do that end cap and you created the inventory to sell, all you've done is take money out of one pocket and put it into the other, and you think you made $1. And it's kind of a fool's errand. Even if it's not a fool's errand and it's a very profitable part of the business, making a retailer stronger and building better customer relationships for the future is the thing to the survival. And you could be a successful media company surrounded by an unsuccessful retailer, and you don't want to do that. So what's the answer? My feeling is figure out what you would do if you had to pay for it that would make sense. Like my loyalty stuff, usually funded myself, but it makes an ROI. If you can determine something that would make an ROI for the retailer and get that paid for, that's profit. If you create inventory to sell, it might be profit, but it could also be a distraction. And at its worst, it's a distraction that's also not profitable because you're creating stuff and you create a whole organization to create things to sell, and you take your eye off the ball of what the customers want. So, and this is tough with the analytics because you can find the analytics to justify things. So, if I create something in an online experience where I serve up an ad for something to a customer, he bought Coke, but I serve up an ad for Pepsi. Did that create the right customer experience? No, but if I measure that to say how many of those people who bought, did I say Pepsi, bought Coke, do buy that Pepsi more than if I didn't serve them the ad, but did I do anything to the majority of people who did not participate in that? Is that giving them an experience where they feel like these people know what I want and it's easy for me, or did I do the inverse of that? Short term, you could find that I made more sales on what my intent was. But long term, what was that experience? So I sound like I'm an extremist, probably because I am, but I think that that's an important point of view, and you need to look at all of those. Right.
So this is a point that I think is we have to touch on, but their RMN team, marketing team, CRM and loyalty team, sometimes the media team, these are all disparate groups with their own P&Ls, oftentimes their own goals.
At a company at scale.
Yeah, and there's an overarching priorities and so forth, but how do you collaborate productively, knowing that sometimes those priorities might be in, I don't know what conflict is the right word, but make sure everyone's rowing the same direction. Because to your point, what might be good for the customer might not be good for one of your vendors or merchants.
I almost answered, I'll let you know when I see an example, because I haven't yet, but that sounds worse than I mean. There are a lot of well-meaning people, but if you've got people that have different jobs, different goals across a big company, it's not going to happen without a lot of effort to say, collaborate. People will collaborate and negotiate a middle. That might not be the optimal. To optimize across those groups, I haven't seen it done. So I'm waiting, but that's where I think a company can make retail media a huge advantage to them. Take in $100, $200 million and fund stuff that you would do anyway. But if you keep separating that across groups, it's not going to happen on its own.
So in other words, work in progress.
I think work in progress.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's raise up a little bit. I'm curious to know if there's any required reading materials that have helped you in your career as a marketer.
Nobody wants my reading list. I think I told you. I'm currently there's a reading list called 10 Years of Reading that I've been doing for about 25 years, from Britannica's Great Books of the Western World. I'm going to come close to finishing it this year. Yes. So I read a lot of crazy shit from, ancient Greece to Thomas Aquinas to Immanuel Kant. Honestly, I think a lot of that stuff does help getting you to think, as much as it's like excruciating to get through and everything else too. Skipping forward to a little bit more modern, I recently took a break from that about a year ago, and I decided I wanted to know more about behavioral economics, and I went through 4 books, 3 of which I would consider classics in the field. Predictably Irrational, Thinking Fast and Slow, and Nudge. They all came out around the same time. They were still, behavioral economics was new. I know a lot of people have still never heard the term behavioral economics, but I like to say behavioral economics is the science. When somebody's putting scientific discipline across how people make decisions, including things like marketing and price and everything, that's the discipline. What we do in marketing is make believe that we know that stuff. So if you ever want to be more disciplined in your thinking, or just take a look and say, I want to challenge my paradigms, look at some of the research about how people make decisions and realize that you do that as well. And then it'll ruin, a week of your time to think like, oh my God, the world's upside down. I don't understand this. But it's actually interesting to look at, to challenge your own paradigms and take your ego out of some of this data-driven stuff and say, maybe I think that they are responding to this because they made them feel a certain way. Maybe they don't even know why I changed their behavior. So I would recommend those books. In the near future, there's a book I will recommend by this author, me. I'll be coming up with something this summer that's very short. If you are like me and just genuinely a lazy person that doesn't want to read all those books, I'm going to come up with a quick start guide of 25 concepts, but written from the perspective of a marketing person. So 25 concepts in behavioral economics and how they might change the way you think about marketing. So,
as part of the brand innovator community, can we all do John a favor and hold him accountable to delivering on this book promise?
I have almost several pages written.
So I think that's
this will be a very short book, by the way.
So one quick provocative question before we open it up for questions. You call it out the top. The drug category at large has been through a challenging couple of years. There's a confluence of factors. Curious to know your take from the
I don't think we know all of the factors, but if you look at foot traffic across the big 3, CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid, there was a surge during COVID. Foot traffic then went backwards. We could say, oh, these people didn't expect that. What's wrong with them? But foot traffic is still below where it was pre-COVID. And there are a lot of great hypotheses out there. I might have some too, but I don't think we really know. But people, the way society is using retail pharmacy in the U.S. is changing. And we're all trying to react from that. Rite Aid was in a tough position going into bankruptcy, closing stores. We've got inventory challenges. So it's especially acute for us. But there's something in the category that in the near future we'll probably know what it is. But I would say right now we don't know, honestly.
Should we open it up? Do we have how much time do we have?
About 2 minutes.
Okay.
Questions.
Time for questions. No, not time for answers, but just questions.
Hi. We've heard a lot about technology, but have you had any time to inspect your store experience? Because if you go to a drugstore these days, they look like the worst bodega in town. Everything's locked up.
Have you been in a Rite
Aid?
Aid?
No one working there.
We have fewer things locked up at Rite Aid because the product's not on the shelf. So we've solved that in a way.
Thank you.
It's been especially tough for Rite Aid, but I know retail is finding challenges anyway. Some of these things I think are self-inflicted, but there's been supply chain issues that we haven't completely resolved. I'm hoping some of that gets better. Rite Aid specifically has a big challenge. But yeah, I've been in stores. I've flown around. For some reason, they think, oh, John lives in Boston, so he can go to Seattle. He can go to Sacramento. That's where they send me all the time. It's the wrong coast. The sun rises on the wrong side of the beach. I don't understand. So yeah, I've been around, and there's some places are rougher than others. But like a lot of things in retail, it matters what your store is doing. If your store is stocked, you're like, I don't know, this company looks great to me. If your store is just a convenience store for you, your expectations of that store are different. We've got Rite Aids where people use it like a supermarket. It's an important part of the community, and they're going there and topping off their food, and people use each location differently, and there's different conditions. So it is a case-by-case basis. But I know I'm kind of avoiding the spirit of your question, but because I don't know.
We can do another question over here.
It's great through these chairs. Well,
Hi, Scott Fernzel with Epsilon. This is more of a statement than a question, but you came back to Retail Media Network, and if anybody's done it right, and I think anybody that really wants that integrated approach, one, you have to have a CMO that owns both Retail Media Network and they own the base core business of their marketing department, and also are tightly aligned to the head of merchandising. And if you can bring all those three things together, one helps the other. So I'll give you a great example. Family Dollar, Brian Messersmith's the CMO there. If you want to know how somebody's doing it right, you need to pick up the phone and call him. And I say that because on their base business, we're helping them out on a lot of different things. But they had a real issue with identity. And if you don't have all your people match the transactions at scale, what do you have to give back to a Procter & Gamble that says, I want closed loop measurement, I only want to advertise these 20 SKUs, and I want to know the incremental ROAS that drove for me, for my business. Oh, and me as the CMO would love to know the halo effect of, oh, I got that money from P&G. How many other products did that person individual buy when they came in store? So if you don't have identity, you don't have that now. So,
I would add to that, if you don't have enough personalized value, you can lower your identity and get into a vicious cycle.
So real quick, so they had like 4 million people identify closed loop transactions all the way through, a lot of cash transactions. Well, that's not scalable. What we were able to do is get that up to like 35 million. And all of a sudden it's really scalable. So the base business helped the Retail Media Network business. Yeah. So I think you hit it on that. If you don't have those all that sync together, you're going to fail, or you have competing goals, right?
There's enough competition outside of a retailer to compete within.
Internally. Right?
Internal. Yeah. Did we have one more?
We can do one more question over here.
I saw somebody,
Getting my steps in today.
Thank you, Matt and John. Love the conversation. Bob Corkery from Captivate. So my question is, in this environment where shoppers go to 5.7 banners per month, 3.5 different channels per month, how do you stay competitive working with your CPG vendor partners when you see the 800-pound gorillas of Amazon and Walmart getting exclusive pricing or better pricing? Because out of the 4 Ps, your cost of goods, you really have only so much control over that.
So I think there's a couple of ways to do that. One of them is the experience. So if you're delivering an experience, now that changes with online because experience means something else. But if you're delivering something about your experience that is better, that's part of the value equation. But I would also say price on an individual product isn't the only level of reality. There's the overall feeling that a customer gets on what did they save on a whole basket or transaction. It's tougher on a convenience store or a drug where somebody might get 1 or 2 items. But in a supermarket, it's a lot easier to give them a couple of personalized things at a deep discount, or even heresy here, I've done free offers. So maybe they spend $1 more on Tide, but are you going to notice that if you got a free Haagen-Dazs this week? And little things like that can change the overall. I don't like the word price perception because we don't know if they're actually making a conscious decision, but changing that behavior around price, I think you can look at it more broadly and fight where you can fight and be clever where you can be clever.
We actually have just a few more minutes. I'm going to turn it over actually to Matt. Do you want to describe what you guys are doing for optimizing customer journey? It's a great conversation. You brought up customer journey and optimizing the edge cases, not just the straightforward cases.
Well, our sweet spot is in the checkout moment. So directly after someone completes a purchase on their favorite pharmacy retail experience, or they complete a purchase within their favorite retailer, specialty retailer, or even grocery, that's where our technology kicks in. And so we're all about how do you enrich that checkout experience, right? So as you're checking out, thanks, John, for your purchase. You're amazing. Here's something special for you before you leave. And so we're trying to kind of give all of our partners that opportunity to have one last moment with that shopper, a surprise and delight moment that gives them some value and provides value to the retailer. And so we think about it a little bit differently because there's a lot of great partners, specifically in this room, that are doing good work and helping to increase the basket size, helping with that path to purchase. So the display ads, the sponsored ads, the search, how do you get more product into the basket, increase average order value, and then our job kicks in after the purchase is complete, as they're about to leave your app, your website, etc. How do you serve them something special? In many cases, it might be non-endemic, right? We're not trying to get them to buy more Cetaphil, but rather if we know that based on whatever insights that we have, this person is a huge reader, maybe the right offer is, hey, here's a free trial to Audible, right? And now you're giving a little kiss on the way out, and they've got all the products they need. They've boosted their Rite Aid rewards points, and they got a free trial to an offer that's going to excite them. So that's how we think about like enhancing and enriching that customer journey.
Good, awesome. Well, I want to thank Matt and John again. We can give them a round of applause. Thank you guys so much.